And we have a guest in the studio, as if that's not enough.
Yay!
Yes, Tony Covington is here with us.
Are those too loud for
No,
you?
they're not. They're not. Everything's great.
All right, good.
Good morning.
Well,
morning.
welcome back to the show, Tony. Glad to have you with us. Tony Covington, of course, the state's attorney for Charles County. Always a busy position, a lot of stuff going on. How are you, sir? What's going on?
I'm doing fantastic, as always. We're fighting the good fight up there
There
in
you go.
Charles County. Continue to seek justice.
There you go. That's exactly
I
right.
love it.
That's all you can
Seeking
do,
justice.
man. Every day.
Hey, podcast. I listened to the podcast about the first part of drunk driving, and it was awesome. It really
thank you.
was, and you really opened my eyes about drunk driving because I didn't realize that. And this is going to sound. It's not going to sound right, but I'm going to say it anyway. Drunk driving still is seen as something that is a
Yeah.
Exactly.
no big, you stupid
Otis
person.
the town drunk. Let him
That's right.
sleep it
That's
off.
right. That's right.
Right.
I get that reference. I don't know if a whole lot of folks will, but
Yeah.
I get it.
Sure.
Look, drunk driving kills over 10,000 people a year. It's been going on forever. As long as folks have been driving, they've been driving drunk. It's no joke. You have 300,000 people a year are injured in drunk driving accidents, right? A third of all the traffic deaths are due to drunk driving. A third.
How many in Charles County? What are we?
That's a good question. I don't have that number off the top of my
That's
head.
okay.
But it's a lot. In Maryland, we have about 180 every year in Maryland, so every other day. Somebody gets-
180
Every other day.
Every other day, somebody's killed by a drunk driver in Maryland.
in Maryland. 180.
See, this is the kind of stuff.
Okay, but the podcast was so interesting because the way you described it and being in the justice system, the way you describe it, it was really telling. It's like somebody will go in and the first offense is like the only thing they're facing is a lot of money. Like for lawyers and things like that. Not a lot of time in jail or anything like that.
Okay, but that's first offense.
But what's the... It's the same. Second offense and third offense. I mean, explain it to him.
The problem is that there aren't any behavior-changing sentences being imposed.
Which would be what? A behavior-changing sentence?
Well, let me ask you this.
Go
How many
ahead.
people would say, okay, I'm going to go to jail for, say, 30 days? Most people I couldn't handle that. Most people can't handle that,
You
right?
don't want to.
Husband and wife are going to be like, you got to do what? How are we going to survive?
Right.
Unfortunately, just like these folks with the shutdown, right?
Right,
Missed his
exactly.
paycheck for 30 days. That's behavior changing. But what is not behavior changing is, okay, you have probation. We'll see you later for the first time. Second time, you're not getting a week in jail, which I don't think that's behavior change. You're not getting a week in jail. As I indicated in the podcast, it's been my experience. I've been doing this stuff almost 30 years now.
Right.
I can't tell you when somebody's going to get, well, the maximum sentence for a first-time drunk driver is 1 year.
And nobody ever
Nobody
gets
gets
that.
that.
That's what
Nobody
he said
gets
in the
Nobody
podcast.
gets that for
Nobody-
the first time. They don't get it for the second time, the third time, the fourth
They
time.
don't get a year
fifth
for the
time?
fourth
No,
time?
Okay,
no.
so
realistically, now if there's some crazy circumstance, for instance, there's an
A death.
accident where there's a serious injury, that might be something else, or the person's fleeing at 100 miles an hour, and putting all
Right.
sorts of people in danger. But realistically,
If an
no.
Officer Smith pulls him over and is like, man, I pulled you over. This is the fifth time. He blows a 1.3 or 1.4. He's in jail fifth time. He probably won't see a year in jail.
Absolutely not.
Is that because of prison overcrowding? Well, why won't he see a year in jail?
It is because what you guys started with. That's what we see about drunk driving. And not only do our courts feel that way, and that's just a reflection of our community. Okay, let's be real about it.
Right.
Not only do the courts feel that way, they encourage it because they continue to give these weak sentences. You asked me off air about the governor's
Right.
proposal.
Let's talk about the
for
governor's
10 years
proposal.
on a second time. Well, that would be great.
If
Guess
they
what?
imposed it.
If they would ever give it, but they're not going to. The legislation that I would like to see
Let's
with
hear
drunk
it.
driving on deaths. You know what the penalty? Well, if you listen to the podcast, you know
Right.
the penalty for a drunk driving death
Wait till you hear this thing.
is 10 years.
You
That's what you
kill
get.
somebody,
Right.
drinking and driving, you kill somebody, you only get the
That's the
maximum.
maximum.
Maximum is 10
And you're probably
years.
not
The
going to get
maximum.
that.
Normally, it's around 5 or 6 years is what they get, and that means you serve maybe
Why don't
years.
they just
So you kill somebody.
Why don't they? Why
Now, wait a
is it-
second. That's for, and I saw raise my hand like Pelosi. I heard y'all talk
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
That's you can get 10 years for an assault, for just touching somebody inappropriately.
Mm-hmm.
You can get 20 years for theft, for goodness sake.
Oh
20
my
years
gosh,
for burglary.
right?
20 years for drug dealing, and you kill somebody in drunk driving, the maximum sentence is 10 years.
Okay, so
How do we change it?
okay,
Well,
hold on 1 second, because this was something that I found interesting in the State of the Union address last night. I'm not well versed on this. You probably are.
Well, he is a state's attorney, T.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I've been fooling everybody all the time.
Right.
For 30 years.
So Trump was going on about some kind of prison reform thing that they had done, and it sounds great. And they had that lady there, first-time offender, some kind of drug thing.
Yes.
So was Kim Kardashian involved?
She helped,
Okay, whatever craziness was going on. So she's there. I think everybody can agree that's bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell are they talking about? And what is the sweeping resolution, these changes that are coming down? The justice system is so convoluted. How can a woman be looking at life in prison? Is it the state laws? Is it federal laws? What is it? Federal laws.
See, here's part of the problem that we're having right here in Maryland, but otherwise. Everybody is taking the admittedly draconian sentences that were handed down in the federal system. Okay, and superimposing that on the whole country. The feds handle less than 10% of all the criminal cases in this country. It is the state courts that handle the large bulk of cases, especially violent crime.
Right.
Okay, if you look at the federal system, there are more people in jail for drugs than there are for violent crimes. Look at the state system, there are more people in jail for violent crimes than there are for drugs and everything else.
I got you.
Okay? All right. Now, the feds, because they can do what they want to do, okay, they pass their own laws, and they had all these mandatory sentences, 3 strikes you're out, and all that stuff.
Right.
Should somebody go into jail for life for drugs? Probably not.
Especially first offense.
Certainly not a first offense.
Well, El Chapo.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
maybe
that's
El
something.
Chapo,
Okay.
but
Right.
other than El
Right.
Chapo.
But the average
She
run,
wasn't El
run-of-the-mill-
Chapo.
Yeah.
No,
Your
she
average-
wasn't.
She's not tunneling out of the prison.
Yeah.
No,
Your
no.
average run-of-the-mill drug dealer, and it might be a whole lot of weight, but seriously, I mean, look, we've tried to wrest our way out of the drug thing for a long time. It doesn't work. Now, I'm talking about folks with possession. Now, if you're talking about drug dealers, that's a different story.
Different story.
But
Right.
that's because drug dealing, the industry is very, very violent. I don't care what drug you're dealing with. Charles
Right.
County, last few years, most of our murders have surrounded marijuana dealing. Okay, so drug dealing, that's something else. All right, they need to go to jail.
Okay,
all right?
possession.
We should actually be
Do you
treating.
think it should be legalized?
Marijuana.
Marijuana.
What?
Marijuana.
You say it. What it?
Marijuana. Should it be legalized for recreational use in the state of Maryland?
Let me say this, and I'm not going to answer your question directly, at least at first.
Okay.
I have a problem.
understand.
I have a problem with what it signals to everybody.
So do
I'm
I.
having a bad day. I'm going to go mess my brain up.
Yeah.
Smoking weed. I'm having a great day. I'm going to go
gonna
celebrate by messing my brain. That goes with drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I kind of have a problem with that. I know the country of Portugal decriminalized all their drugs, and they're still standing. And drug use hadn't gone up all that much. I don't know about you guys, but I never used any drugs in my life and never will. Not because it's legal or illegal, because I'm just not going to do it. Right?
Right.
And that's the vast majority of people in this country just aren't going to abuse what are now illegal drugs. Although I'm not buying all the hype that marijuana doesn't have any health issues and this, that, and the other. Remember who's telling us all this.
Yeah, people making money
the
off
guys are
marijuana.
making billions and billions of dollars, just like the cigarette guys did back in the day. So I don't necessarily believe there are no health consequences to it. But as far as drugs, how we should treat them,
Right.
they are a health issue. Sure, law enforcement has a role in it, as far as the dealers are concerned.
Right.
But as far as those folks who are
Carrying.
addicts, carrying, possession, it should be dealt with as a health issue, not necessarily a law enforcement issue. Now, I say that, but does that mean Tony Cummings is going to stop enforcing certain laws? Absolutely not. You want to know why? One, I took an oath to enforce those laws.
Right.
And two, we aren't doing anything resource-wise, aren't doing enough, let me put it that way, to help the folks who are addicts and get them off of it. So what are we going to do? We stop doing anything? Nothing happens. So until they start putting the resources to it, which they claim they're going to,
Right.
Let me ask
Which
you
the
this.
president said
That's an
last
interesting
night.
question because I've often thought about that. I have the luxury of taking an oath to nothing. I stroll through life carefree. But you
well,
did
to be decent, to be a decent human being.
I had my fingers crossed. But you did take an oath, and you I'm sure have found yourself in situations where you have to enforce or prosecute a law that maybe you don't agree with.
Ooh, good question.
How does that go?
Well, whatever the law is, I'm going to follow the law. One, and this always gets me in trouble. People look at me like I got 8 heads when I say this. Hate crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh.
Legislation specifically for hates. I think we learned a long time ago you can't legislate what's in people's hearts or in their minds.
Of course.
Right? Also, just because something looks like a hate crime, I start beating you up and start calling you all sorts of racial this, that, and the other.
Right.
And then at the very end, I say, that's what you get for sleeping with my wife. Well, what was it? Was it a hate crime?
Right.
Or something else?
Right.
But my thing is, we have judges. It is their job to give proper sentences for what has happened. And the judge can take into account the person's motive.
Okay.
In hate crimes, it's kind of like the only category of crimes that you have to prove motive. You don't have to prove motive in a murder case or a robbery or anything else. All right? With hate crimes, you have to prove motive, and it's very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So to me,
extra time for a hate crime is kind of
that's up to the judge.
Right.
That's up to the judge. Okay?
Do you think? And I
get the symbolic nature of why we do it and this, that, and the other, but to me, it's not very useful.
We're talking with Tony Covington, State's Attorney for Charles County, for just tuning in.
I'm not going to put you on the spot here. But,
well, let's do.
Well, I want to go back to the podcast and drunk driving.
Mm-hmm.
Are judges not doing their job? Are they? Is there no
He's got to
dude?
stand in front of them.
Well, hold on.
Well, hold on a second. I got no problem answering the question. As far as Tony Covington is concerned, no, they're not. They are not making this community safer with the sentences as they impose them right now. But again, they reflect the attitude of the community.
Gotcha.
And the community doesn't say, hey, judge, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. This guy's has been drunk 3 or 4 times. Or, hey, judge, this guy killed somebody.
Right.
And you gave him 4 years in jail, which means he's going to be out in less than a year with parole and everything else. Okay? And you have taken
It doesn't.
you
Right.
have taken a person
Listen to the podcast. It's
taken
really
a
good.
person off the face of the earth forever.
Forever.
But doesn't that speak to a bigger thing? This is another issue I've had. We got to get you in here for like 6 hours.
He's got issues,
This drives me nuts. You just hit on it. And you talked earlier about behavioral modification or changing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sentences, behavioral.
Okay, but what does it say to a person? Look, I got a 30-year mortgage. Guess how long I'm going to pay that mortgage? 30 years. The bank's not going to go, you were a hell of a guy about 15 years in. Good behavior, the house is yours. Get out of here, you wacky funster. Get out of here.
Shine on, you crazy diamond.
Shine on, you crazy diamond. But somebody does something horrible, and we go, 4 years. How dare you, shameful.
Well, it's plea bargaining,
12
too.
months later, God,
But that's my next podcast.
Get on out of here.
Is it plea bargaining? Because you plea, right? You do
Of course. 95% of criminal cases ended up not in a trial.
How can you hope to get a message across of penance and time served and so on and so forth? Punishment, if you want to call it that.
Punishment is what it is.
If they don't do the time.
Right. Well, in federal system, they don't have any parole. They say they don't have any parole.
Right.
They do have a little bit of good time. But in the federal sentence, you're going to do 70, 80% of that time. I tell my attorneys all the time, I'm not a huge fan of probation. Give somebody a sentence, let them do their time, go and sin no more.
They've
paid
their
penance,
debt.
and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And quite frankly, and I've said this before, I kind of see what we call split sentences. Give somebody 10 years, suspend all but 5, put them on probation. It takes judges off the hook. See, judges need to say, this crime is worth this much of your life, Mr. Defendant, right? And then impose that sentence. But they don't have to. They say, I'll give you 10. I'll suspend all but 2 years. And, if you do right, well, look, if the crime was worth 10 years, he should get 10 years.
So when are you going to run for judge?
I'm not going to run for judge. I don't want to be a judge. Never wanted to be a judge.
But they're not doing their job from your perspective.
Okay. And if I'm a judge, guess what? Now I might be able to do it, but I can't get anybody else to do it.
No. Hold on. Governor Covington.
Oh, Lord.
Governor Covington.
Okay, well.
Right?
Is that something?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh!
I'm taking that as an affirmative yes.
He did a look to the left.
That was hardcore.
He took
I
a look
watch
to the
those
left.
things. Look to the left means that's what. Come on.
I didn't get that memo, but okay.
I think you'd be a fantastic governor.
Well, thank you.
I
I've
think
got
you
opinions
would
like
be.
everybody else does. I mean, yeah, I've just been doing this stuff for a long time.
How many
and
skeletons in the closet, though? Like a brother or a sister that's
Well-
crazy? Because that's why he would
Well, as
never.
soon as I say there are any, then people start looking.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
can't say
All right.
anything.
Can you give
Speaking of skeletons in the closet, okay?
What are you gonna?
How
out?
wacky is Liam Neeson?
What?
What was that about?
I don't know.
Here, let me give you a little rule of thumb, just for the listeners in the future. Let's say you had a crazy thought,
Right.
and you said to yourself, I think I'm going to go out. But it was a stick. I don't know what he said he
I
had.
think a baseball bat or something.
I'm going to beat the first black guy I see. That's what I'm going to do. Years later, when somebody says to you, hey, did you ever, what's the craziest thing you did? They're talking about streaking.
On the quad.
That's what they're talking. You don't say
They're
that.
talking about stealing a pack of gum.
Well, there was this one time when I thought I might take a stick and go out into the street and
It was-
randomly. What the what?
It's nuts. I don't know.
You don't have to share that because maybe it was a moment of insanity. I don't know what the hell was going on there.
I don't either. I don't know.
Well, did he take any steps?
He
said he went out looking.
He went
Did he?
out to bars.
He said he did.
And if you don't know the
Oh,
story,
he couldn't find any black folks? I mean, what?
I don't know. Dude, the guy's nuts.
his friend was
Okay.
raped, and all she knew
Okay.
was he was African American, and he
Yeah.
got so upset
That he
he
said-
Oh, that's
went
what he was
from
trying
bar
to
to
say.
bar.
Okay.
He went
Okay.
from bar to bar, and he was going to just pick
How about-
somebody
Yeah,
out.
he needs to keep that to himself.
You keep
Right?
that to yourself.
You don't
You
talk
keep
about
that
that.
to yourself. You could have a moment of wackiness. A, you don't act on it.
He didn't do it,
And
no.
B, you don't revisit it in a press conference
For Men in Black
like
4.
30 years later.
Was that what it was for?
Something like that.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him
Some
on.
new movie.
Yeah, they said, "Don't show up at the red carpet. You can't
He can't
show
be
up."
on the red carpet.
What the what?
I don't know. Can you give us a little take real quick? Because I know we're running out of time. Can you give us a little, the next podcast you said was going to be about
We're going to be
plea
on
agreements.
plea agreements. The necessity of those. We've got. We already did one on domestic violence. That's up there.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got? We're going to deal with police misconduct at some time.
Ooh, I want to hear that.
Everything. I'm trying to cover all things. It's all just educational.
How
hopefully
often
for
do they
folks.
come out? Every
Try
2
to-
weeks?
Well, now you put me on a spot
Mm-hmm.
here. Candace is looking at me like, well, they're supposed to come out every 2 weeks.
Every
but
2 weeks.
Covington doesn't
Right.
get it done in time. So,
Governor Covington is not getting his job.
So we're trying to do better and get them out
Governor.
but we've been trying to put one out actually every month is what we've been trying to do.
Okay.
Okay, good. Can you give the website of where people
It's,
can find the podcast?
CCSAO. That stands for Charles County State's Attorney's Office .us.
.us.
CCSAO.us. Right on the front page, scroll down, and Tony Talks, Charles County Crime. That's the name.
It's always a pleasure to
Tony?
have you in, Governor.
thank
It
you.
It's a
really
thrill.
is. See how that just rolls off
see how
the
nicely,
tongue?
See how nicely that goes together?
That really does.
So you might want to keep that in mind. All right. Well, listen, always a pleasure. You come by anytime, all right?
Well, I love everything you guys are doing, so thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, listen, we're running late. Let's get a check of traffic.